My ex-wife and her new husband accused me of abuse, with my daughter's help. That night, I didn't just clear my name, I crushed their plan. Isolde called to me from the courthouse's entrance. After 15 years of parenting kids alone, we found ourselves in family court to allow another guy to adopt my 16 and 17-year-old girls. Are you sure about this? I begged them one final time as we waited outside the courtroom, clutching onto the little hope I still had. Dorian actually understands what it means to be a real father, Thalia replied coldly, chilling my blood. All you know how to say is that there's no money. He's going to take us to Europe this summer and has already promised us the best colleges. She giggled. Finally, we'll have a father who is worth having, not one who embarrasses us in front of our friends. When the judge questioned if they were certain, Thalia spoke plainly. Yes, Your Honor. This man never understood what we needed. Dorian is the father we deserve. He has a vision for the future, she said. Not like him. She made a contemptuous gesture at me. The judge's gavel sounded like the death penalty. Adoption approved. I saw them rush to him, my ex-wife. They never gave me such enthusiastic hugs before. Dorian smiled triumphantly as he gazed at me from above them. I left the courthouse feeling as if 15 years of sacrifice had been trampled on. That night, I unlocked my laptop and checked the bank account I had kept hidden. $447,000. For the first time in years, I found myself smiling. They were no longer my daughters, and no longer my problem. They had no right to a single cent of what I had created for them. Although the emptiness was painful, their ignorance of what they had truly lost almost made up for it. The day after court, I couldn't get out of bed. I contacted work and informed them that I was sick. It was not a falsehood. I felt physically destroyed. I attempted to eat breakfast, but the first bite became caught in my throat. 15 years of sacrifice were shattered in an afternoon, and I had to smile as if I was fine with it. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I remembered something. My mother's trust fund. The girls were no longer my legal daughters. What did this mean for the money? I called Octavian, the attorney who handled my mother's trust. I had known him since I was a kid. He had been a family friend for several decades. Son, I'm so sorry to hear what happened yesterday, he remarked after I told him all about the court session. But there's something you should know. That $2 million trust is now entirely yours. How? I was curious about. Your mother was smarter than you thought. She put in a specific clause. If the girls cease to be your legal dependents, the money automatically transfers to the biological father. She never trusted your ex-wife. I was still thinking about the news. Octavian, I need you to explain this to me clearly. It's simple. They renounced you as their legal father. The trust no longer has valid beneficiaries. The full $2 million is yours. No strings attached. That money was never touched because it was intended for when they went to college. I said my goodbyes and returned to my office. I took my credentials from the safe and logged into all of my bank accounts. I have $447,000 in my own account. Now with the trust's $2 million, I received $2,447,000 as my prize for sacrificing 15 years of my life for them. That afternoon, I started my own investigation. Octavian had said that he knew an accountant who could discreetly investigate Dorian's accounts, but it would take time. Meanwhile, I remembered Isolde having used my old MacBook during her first years in high school. I located it in the closet and switched it on to see that her iCloud was still synchronized. Her messages and images were all there. What I read in the family discussions both devastated and educated me. Texts from my ex-wife and the girls dating back 2 years. Every sacrifice I'd made was regarded as a failure. Dad works so much because he doesn't care about us. He only cares about money. He never takes us to nice places because he's cheap. It's embarrassing that he drives that old car when all our friends' dads have new cars. I'm ashamed when he picks me up from school. The other moms laugh at his car. I hope he doesn't come to Thalia's graduation. He'll look bad next to the other dads. My ex had created an entire story. I was the stingy villain. Dorian was their rescuing hero, taking them to posh restaurants and buying them fashionable clothes when they visited her on weekends. She had planned this treachery for years, using every expensive gift to contrast with my thriftiness. A week later, the accountant called me with some preliminary information regarding Dorian. Your ex-brother is screwed, he stated plainly. He owes $400,000 to private lenders. His business has been bankrupt for 6 months. From the public records I could review, he desperately needs money. And my ex-wife knows this. I'm not sure. But from what I could see in public records, she might be lending him money she doesn't have. That evening, Isolde shared a video with me via WhatsApp. It read, "She and Thalia were posing in front of a red convertible BMW. Look what Daddy Dorian is going to give us for our 18th birthdays, one for each of us. Finally, someone who invests in our future and understands we need to arrive at college in style." I answered with a simple thumbs up emoji. The accountant's report made me think. If Dorian was that desperate, who else would he have approached for money? There was just one person nearby and trusting enough to fall into his trap. I pulled up the phone number for Don Alaric, my ex-wife's father. We hadn't communicated for a year. "Don Alaric, it's Cassian." There was quiet on the line. "Son," he murmured in a fatigued tone. "I knew you'd call one day." "How are my granddaughters?" he inquired, concerned. "I haven't heard from them in weeks. My daughter said they were busy with school." I had to inform him about the court case, the adoption, and everything. He remained quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was trembling with wrath. "That expletive. Do you know why she wouldn't let me see them? Because she knew I would find out the truth about that Dorian." "What truth?" was my response. "Don Alaric? That bastard owes me $60,000 that I lent him 2 years ago to save his business. My daughter swore he would pay me back. Now I understand why they wanted that trust fund." His tone became harsher. "But there's more. 5 years ago that guy scammed an insurance company by faking a workplace accident. My daughter helped him forge medical documents. I have copies of everything because she asked me to keep some important papers at my house." "Why are you telling me this now, Don Alaric?" "Because they took my granddaughters from me to protect a con man. And because I'm tired of being taken for a fool. If they want to play dirty, I know how to play dirty too." That night I began to arrange something I never imagined I'd do. An adoption celebration. I leased the city's most luxurious ballroom, the Crystal Palace. $5,000 for a single night. I called my ex-wife. "I want to throw a party to celebrate the adoption," I told her quietly. "A proper farewell." She remained silent for a few seconds, likely expecting me to cry or beg. "Wow, you're finally understanding your place in all of this," she said, with arrogance that made me giggle. "Fine, I accept. But make it a decent place, not some cheap restaurant like always. The Crystal Palace is already booked." "Really?" It was obvious that she was surprised. "Well, then make sure the champagne is Veuve Clicquot, not that trash you used to buy." Of course, the next few days were spent preparing 2 PowerPoint presentations containing all of the information I had gathered. The girls' messages, the accountant's reports on Dorian, the insurance fraud documents from Don Alaric, screenshots of the videos displaying the BMWs, and of course, the bank statements revealing the millions they had just lost. I also chose to change my appearance. It wasn't simply the gymnasium. I hired a personal trainer, a dietitian, and a tailor to create personalized outfits. If I was going to do something, I was going to do it correctly. A week before the celebration, a parcel arrived by courier. Inside were all of the father-daughter images I had framed in my house, including the ones that had gone missing, as well as a handwritten note from Isolde. "You can keep the memories. We'll take the future." That night, I burnt the photos in the fireplace. I no longer felt agony, just cold, unwavering clarity. Instead of relaxing on the couch the next day, I went to the gym. I initially saw her while lifting more weight than I had in years. Her name was Selena. Nothing happened that day, but for the first time in a long time, I recognized there was life outside of my house. The audit was over. It was time to collect, and perhaps live again. The numbers did not lie, and they indicated that it was time to collect. The first evidence of panic occurred 3 days after they confirmed the party. My ex-wife has sent me a message. "I need the guest list to curate it. I want to make sure it's appropriate for the girls." I sent her a list of 40 people. What I didn't tell her was that I had prepared a second list of everyone she would check out. Dorian's co-workers who knew the truth, his old business partner to whom he owed money, and of course, Don Alaric. Predictably, she returned the list with half of the names crossed out. "These people are not appropriate for a family celebration," she said. Perfect. That following afternoon, Dorian called me personally for the first time. "Hey, can we talk like men?" His voice tried to seem kind, but I could sense uneasiness. "Of course. Look, now that I'm the girl's father, I'd like to access their educational accounts. My lawyer says that as their legal guardian, I have the right to manage the trust fund your mother left them." There it was, the true reason for all of this, the trust fund. I pretended to be confused. "Dorian, I don't know what you're talking about. Come on, man. My wife told me there was money set aside for their education. A trust your mother established. For the girls. Oh, that. I never had access to those funds. My mother handled everything. And then Octavian, the family lawyer. But honestly, he never told me exactly how much was in there. There was a long sigh. Could you give me his number? Sure. I gave him Octavian's phone number, knowing exactly what would happen. He hung up fast. The next day Octavian called me, exhausted from laughter. Son, your ex-wife's husband just called me demanding access to the trust. When I explained that it no longer has valid beneficiaries because of the adoption, he went crazy. What exactly did you tell him? The truth. That the money automatically reverted to you when they legally renounced being your daughters. He remained silent for almost 5 minutes before yelling that it was impossible. That afternoon my phone exploded. My ex-wife called me upset. You're a damn thief, she exclaimed as soon as I responded. Excuse me? You stole my daughter's money. That trust fund was for them. They were your daughters. They're not my daughters anymore, remember? You said so yourself in court. You know perfectly well what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. You had my daughters adopted to steal their money, and now you're furious because the plan backfired. The line was quiet for a few seconds. I don't know what you're talking about, she replied, attempting to appear innocent. Please, Dorian didn't just happen to call asking about the girls' educational accounts. This was all a plan from the beginning. She didn't answer the phone. 2 days later, I had a visit that confirmed how far they were willing to go. A social worker arrived at my home, accompanied by a police officer. Sir, we've received a formal complaint of child abuse and financial neglect, the social worker explained. May we come in? My heart raced as I allowed them in. My place was spotless, and my documents were well organized. I had expected something like this. The complainants alleged that you denied basic financial support to minors for years, causing them severe psychological trauma. Who are the complainants? I requested the information. Your ex-wife and her current husband. They also have signed statements from the minors. They were there. They had persuaded my own daughters to formally accuse me of abuse. May I see the statements? I asked, and they showed me the documents. Isolde and Thalia had submitted written statements alleging emotional deprivation, intentional financial negligence, and psychological harm caused by poor living conditions. These are very serious accusations, the officer told me. If proven, we're talking about criminal charges. I understand. Can I have a few minutes to look for some documents? I went up to my room and returned with a box full of papers. Bank statements, paid tuition bills, school supply receipts, medical bills, everything I'd saved for 15 years. Here are all the expenses I covered for the girls for 15 years. Private tuition, private health insurance, extracurricular activities, clothes, food, all documented. The social worker spent half an hour reviewing the documentation. Sir, this clearly shows you have covered all basic expenses and more. Is there any reason why the minors would sign these statements? Because their adoptive parents convinced them they needed access to a family trust they can no longer touch. I explained the entire situation, including the trust, the adoption, and Dorian's call. The cop and social worker exchanged looks. Do you have proof that the adoption was motivated by money? The officer inquired. Does a recording work? I pulled out my phone. I had recorded my whole talk with Dorian concerning the trust fund. I played the audio in which Dorian revealed his lawyer assured him he had the authority to operate the trust, and his displeasure was palpable when I told him I knew nothing about the money. This is highly irregular, the social worker stated. We will need to investigate these accusations further, but from this perspective it appears that someone is using the system for financial pressure. They left after 2 hours, but not before the cop said something that chilled my blood. If these accusations proceed, they will try to request a restraining order and an asset freeze. Have your papers in order. That night, I was unable to sleep. They had not only attempted to rob me, but they had also turned my own girls into weapons that may land me in jail. The next day, I did something that I knew would seal their fate. I called the financial aid offices at the 2 institutions where Isolde and Thalia were supposed to attend. Good morning. I need to formally withdraw my statement of financial support and my guarantee as a co-signer for my daughter's student loans. Is there a problem, sir? They are no longer legally my daughters. They were adopted by another man. Therefore, I am no longer responsible for their educational finances. Furthermore, they just filed a formal complaint accusing me of child abuse and financial neglect. There was a prolonged pause. Sir, this will trigger an immediate review of their enrollment. Without verified paternal financial support, their adoptive father will have to take responsibility for their financial obligations. He had adopted children deliberately to gain access to their educational trust fund. After a week, the results became apparent. Thalia called me, weeping. "Dad, I need you to help me with something urgent. I'm not your dad anymore, Cammy, legally speaking. Please, just listen to me. My university enrollment was canceled, and I also have a $5,000 credit card debt. It was for a trip to Cancun that Dorian gave us. But now he says I have to pay for it." So now that the plan had failed, Dorian was already withdrawing his generous gifts. "And why would that be my responsibility?" I requested an explanation. "Because you caused us emotional trauma with your cheapness all these years. It's the least you can do." Her icy tone left me stunned. They had just formally accused me of abuse, yet they expected me to fix their problems. According to the county family court, that responsibility now belongs to Mr. Dorian Martinez. Call him Dad. I blocked her for the first time ever. I blocked my own daughter. That afternoon, I bought a Patek Philippe. My stopwatch marked the conclusion of this nightmare. I formally requested Selena to join me at the party. She was a lady I began dating after meeting her at the gym, which I could not have done when my entire life revolved around the duties of being a single father. During our dinner prior to the party, I realized something awful. They hadn't simply usurped my duty as a father. They had stolen years from my life that I would never get back. The night of the party, I straightened my cufflinks in the mirror. The man thought on having survived the most vicious attempt at personal destruction he had ever seen. I arrived at the Crystal Palace in a chauffeured Mercedes. When Selena and I went in, I noticed them. Dorian sweating in a rental suit, my ex-wife apprehensive, and Isolde and Thalia perplexed, unsure why their university enrollments had been canceled that week. When they spotted me, their faces were filled with horror and perplexity. For a time, they didn't recognize me. The man stepping in was not the exhausted father they had seen in court 2 months ago. He wore a superbly fitted suit, had a transformed body, and was accompanied by a gorgeous and successful woman who appeared to have walked out of a magazine. Dorian became visibly pale. He realized he'd utterly underestimated his victim. This was hardly the dejected loser he had expected to witness. I nodded to them. The actual visitors were arriving. The presentations, including the fraudulent abuse charges, were placed into my laptop. "Are you ready?" Selena murmured. "The show is about to begin." I approached the small stage in the ballroom. The murmur of discussions decreased gradually. All eyes were on me. The genuine guests I had carefully selected, Dorian's creditors, Don Alaric's spiteful smirk, and of course my old family in the heart of the room, paralyzed by perplexity. "Good evening," I said, adjusting the microphone. "Thank you for joining us for this very special celebration. I organized this party to commemorate a significant transfer, a transfer of a duty, a responsibility, and a future." I hooked up my notebook to the projector. The massive screen behind me illuminated. For 15 years I worked 2 jobs to give my daughters what they deserved. The first slide featured my financial statements. Over time, double shifts, every cent reinvested. "Isolde, you said my budget spreadsheets were humiliating. Here is the final spreadsheet." $447,000 came on screen. A woman in the front row gasped. "And this is their grandmother's gift." I compared the trust fund and the adoption decree. $2 million. But as you can see, as of May 15th, they are no longer legally my daughters. This money is now legally mine. My ex-wife shot up from her seat. "You stole the girl's money." "I stole? I stole the money I saved for 15 years? I stole the trust fund that legally reverted to me when you stole my daughters from me? Let's talk about theft." Dorian, the screen displayed his debts, $400,000 to private lenders, and a failed firm. My daughters traded a guaranteed college education for a con man. Dorian attempted to stand, but his creditors quickly surrounded him. "But the best part is yet to come." My voice became icy. "Remember the abuse allegations you made against me?" I showed the signed statements. A man in a suit mumbled, "My God," when he read, "My daughter signed this. My father caused me significant psychological harm by refusing me basic financial support. Do you know why they lied under oath?" I divided the screen. On the left is the video Isolde gave me. "Look what Daddy Dorian is going to give us for our 18th birthdays. One for each of us." Her sworn testimony is on the right. My father forced inadequate and terrible living circumstances on us. The room was suffocatingly silent. Isolde buried her face and sobbed. Those statements are false, my ex-wife exclaimed desperately. False. Let's see. I engaged my phone's audio. Dorian's voice dominated the entire room. My lawyer claims that as their legal guardian, I have the authority to manage the trust fund your mother left them. Thalia cried, we didn't know. But nobody believed her anymore. Don Alaric rose from his seat and walked determinedly towards Dorian. You, he exclaimed, pointing to him. You expletive con man. Dorian looked pale. Don Alaric, I don't know what you're talking about. $60,000, yelled Don Alaric. You've owed me $60,000 for 2 years, you bastard. You said it was to save your business. The entire room became silent. Dorian attempted to flee, but the creditors trapped him. And that's not all, Don Alaric added, his voice quivering with wrath. You convinced my daughter to forbid me from seeing my granddaughters, also I wouldn't find out you're a useless failure. Don Alaric, please, Dorian called out. Please, what? Please don't say that you also scammed an insurance company. Did you all know they accused me of abuse to help a criminal? Because it turns out Dorian isn't just a family con man. I imagined the insurance fraud paperwork. 5 years ago, he defrauded an insurance company, and my ex-wife helped him forge medical documents. My ex-wife's face fell. Several attendees began bringing out their phones to record. Dorian attempted to run, but Don Alaric stopped him. You're not going anywhere, you thief. You told my granddaughters their grandfather was a bad person so they wouldn't find out you live by scamming people. And here's the perfect ending, I remarked, projecting the final slide. Not only did they lose the trust fund and my money, the universities didn't just cancel their enrollments, they reported them to other institutions for document fraud. They're blacklisted. Thalia and Isolde exchanged terrified looks. Their educational prospects had virtually evaporated. Dad, please, Isolde cried. We didn't know. You didn't know what? That you formally accused me of abuse? That you signed sworn affidavits lying about how I treated you? Or that you did it to help a con man rob me? Dorian promised us a paid-for college education, new cars, trips, Thalia cried out. He told us you were cheap, that you made us suffer on purpose, and you chose to believe him instead of asking me for the truth. My ex-wife lurched toward me. Cassian, can we fix this? You and I, we can what? I interrupted her. Get back together? 3 months ago you called me mediocre and told me Dorian was a better father. Now that you've discovered I have over $4 million, suddenly I'm a good option. That's our daughter's $4 million, she yelled hysterically. Our daughters? I gazed at her, stunned. We don't have daughters anymore. You took care of that. They are my $4 million, which I earned with my sacrifice, and you will not touch a single cent. I returned to the microphone for the final strike. You freed me from my purpose as a father. It's only fair that I free you from my wallet. I took Selena's hand and walked towards the exit, arm in arm with her, as total chaos broke out behind me. Dorian confronted by multiple creditors, Don Alaric screaming truths at him, and my ex-wife bombarded with questions about the fraud. Where are we going? Selena said as the chauffeur opened the Mercedes door for us. Home. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. Isolde and Thalia stood alone in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by the calamity they had helped cause. They were no longer my issue. They were no longer my daughters. And for the first time in 15 years, it felt liberating. It's been 8 months since the party. Dorian is doing 2 years in jail for insurance fraud. My ex-wife received probation in exchange for testifying against him, but she still has a criminal record. Neither of them can find a respectable job. Don Alaric recovered $50,000 of his $60,000 debt by selling Dorian's sports automobile after it was repossessed. Isolde works as a waiter at a restaurant where she used to go with her friends for lunch. Thalia works the night shift at a supermarket, stocking shelves. They shared a 1-bedroom apartment and split their expenditures. The BMWs never existed. One Saturday morning, I was in the garden when the doorbell rang. Selena was at the spa, so I decided to open it myself. Isolde and Thalia stood on my porch. They were different, thinner, tired, but with a look in their eyes I hadn't seen in years. Respect. Perhaps fear. Hi, Dad, Isolde murmured in a trembling voice. What are you doing here? I asked in a neutral tone, not unfriendly but not warm. We wanted to talk to you, Thalia responded. If you have time. For 8 months, we've worked and thought about what we did to you. We called you cheap when you were working 2 jobs to give us everything. Now we know what it's like to wake up at 5 a.m. to count every penny, she said. We understand you did that for us for 15 years. They grieved silently. Dad, Isolde explained, we know we have no right to ask you for anything, but we want to show you that we understand. They showed me spreadsheets detailing their expenses, part-time work schedules, and university budgets calculated to the cent. Everything I had done for years while they mocked me. It's a loan, Thalia explained. With interest. We want to earn back the right to be your daughters. I did not say yes right away. I assured them that I would think about it. Last week I emailed them a professional contract, namely an educational finance arrangement. A 3% interest loan is conditional on maintaining a 3.5 GPA, working 20 hours per week, filing monthly expense reports, and participating in bi-weekly progress video calls. They signed it without reading the entire fine print. Selena and I moved into a home with an ocean view. I visited Europe twice this year. I invested the money, and it has already earned an additional $800,000. For the first time in 15 years, I'm living the way I want. Last night I had my first video call with Isolde. She showed me her grades, all A's. Her budget was ideal. After we concluded, she added, "Thank you for giving us a second chance, Dad." "You are earning it," I said. "This is not the father-daughter bond we had previously. It is better. It is built on mutual respect, not obligation. They appreciate the value of goods since they paid for them through their own work." My ex-wife messaged me for months. The last one stated, "I hate you. You ruined our lives." I changed my phone number. Sometimes I wonder whether I was overly harsh. Then I recall Thalia telling me, "Dorian promised us a paid-for college education, new cars, and trips. He told us you were cheap by choice, not necessity. And it passes."